I had learned to trust her. In the beginning, I thought that's all I'd ever need to do, trust her, believe her when she said the things that came out of her mouth, assume the best because why would I ever question her? But today, as I stared at the red smear of lipstick on the hem of her dress, I felt something shift inside of me, a cold dread creeping up my spine. It wasn't hers. My hands trembled as I held the fabric in front of me, staring at the unmistakable mark that wasn't supposed to be there. The lipstick didn't match any of the shades in her makeup bag. This was someone else's. I could already feel the words she would say, "It's nothing, it's no big deal. I told you it was just a long dinner with clients." I had heard it all before. But today, it didn't feel right. I set the dress down on the bed with a careful precision that didn't match the fury boiling in my stomach. I wanted to scream, to throw it across the room, to demand answers in that moment. But I couldn't. Not yet. I knew she would be home soon, and the thought of her walking through the door, smiling as if nothing had changed, only made my chest tighten. I wasn't ready for the confrontation. Not yet. I ran my fingers over the lipstick stain again, trying to make sense of it. I had heard her come in late last night, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor, the door barely creaking as she closed it. I had stayed up for hours, waiting for her to explain herself. But she didn't. She hadn't even looked at me when she walked past, her face pale and tired. She just muttered something about the business dinner running late and disappeared into the bathroom. Business dinner. The phrase echoed in my head, like a bad song on repeat. How many times had she said that? How many late nights, how many hours spent working with her colleagues? At first, I didn't mind. I had believed it, believed her. But this felt different. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at her text from just an hour ago, running a bit late. "Don't wait up, love. I'll make it up to you." A part of me wanted to believe her. After all, she'd always been a successful businesswoman. She thrived on late nights, on networking dinners. She had always been careful with her words, with her explanations. But something in me now saw the cracks in that carefully constructed image. I couldn't stop thinking about the lipstick. The way it had stained the fabric, bright and bold, like a fingerprint that couldn't be erased. The shade wasn't hers. And that meant it was someone else's. I could almost feel the weight of the lie, the deceit, pressing down on me. I had always told myself that if something felt off, I'd trust my instincts. But what if I was wrong? What if this was just a coincidence, a silly misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew this wasn't a coincidence. There was no part of me that could ignore the weight of it. The door clicked open, and I froze. My heart thudded painfully in my chest as I heard the sound of her heels coming down the hallway. I quickly shoved the dress back into the closet and tried to compose myself, wiping my sweaty palms on my jeans. I didn't want her to see how shaken I was, how fragile my calm had become in the face of this suspicion. She walked in, a bright smile on her face, as if nothing was wrong, nothing had changed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had. She paused when she saw me sitting on the edge of the bed, my gaze fixed on the floor. Her eyes narrowed slightly, her smile faltering for just a second. "Hey," she said softly, her voice a little more cautious than usual. "You okay?" I nodded, but it felt like the biggest lie I had ever told. "Yeah, just waiting for you to get home." She set her bag down on the chair and started to undress, peeling off her blouse with a practiced grace. She didn't seem to notice the tension in the room, the way the air seemed to be charged with something I couldn't put into words. I couldn't let her go on, pretending everything was fine. Not anymore. The words slipped out before I could stop them. "You said the dinner ran late," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I found lipstick on your dress." She froze for a moment, her back to me as she continued to unbutton her blouse. The moment stretched on like eternity. I waited, barely breathing, as her movements slowed. When she finally turned to face me, her face was different. The smile was gone, replaced by something I couldn't quite read. Guilt? Fear? Something darker? "Listen, she started, but I cut her off. "Whose lipstick is it?" I asked, the words sharper than I intended. She blinked, caught off guard. For a second, she looked as though she might deny it. But then, her expression shifted, and she walked over to the bed, sitting beside me. "I told you, it's nothing," she said, her voice low. "It was just a mistake. A little mix-up. I was talking to a colleague, Anne." "A colleague?" I interrupted, feeling the anger rise in me now. "You're telling me it's just a mistake? That lipstick wasn't mine, and it sure as hell wasn't yours. Don't lie to me." She exhaled sharply, looking away from me. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, she said, her voice small now. But it's not what you think. It's complicated. I stared at her, trying to read her face, to find some trace of truth in her words. The way she spoke was rehearsed, like she had said this 1,000 times before. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that there was some reasonable explanation for this. But I knew, deep down, I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. I'm not stupid, I said, my voice trembling. I want the truth, all of it. What's really going on? She looked at me then, her eyes soft, almost apologetic. But there was a distance in them too, a wall that I had never seen before. I never meant for you to find out, she said again, her voice cracking slightly. But I think it's time you did. My stomach dropped. She had said it before. It's time you did. There was no going back now. The truth was about to unfold. The silence that hung in the air between us felt suffocating, like a heavy curtain I couldn't pull away. Her words were too much for me to process, too much to accept in that moment. The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as though they were closing in on me, suffocating me with the weight of everything I had just learned. Or rather, what I was beginning to understand. She sat beside me, her body stiff and trembling, and for the first time since I met her, I couldn't read her expression. The look in her eyes was distant, like she was somewhere far away, trying to gather the courage to say whatever it was she knew was coming. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her blouse, the fingers pulling at the fabric in a way that betrayed her nerves. I didn't want to hurt you, she began, her voice barely a whisper. I never meant to make you feel like this. She looked at me now, her gaze pleading, as though she was asking for my forgiveness before she even spoke the truth. But there's more to the story than you think. I swallowed hard, feeling the lump in my throat grow larger with each passing second. More? What do you mean, more? I couldn't even hear my own voice clearly, the anger and confusion making it impossible to control the tremor in my words. What could be more than the lipstick on your dress, the lie about the dinner, the fact that you didn't even tell me what was really going on? I never wanted to keep things from you, she said, her voice shaking now. It wasn't like that. It's just that, she paused, as though searching for the right words, and then let out a long breath. There's someone else. The words hit me like a punch to the chest, the air leaving my lungs in an instant. I stared at her, unable to process what she had just said. It felt like everything in the room stopped, the air, the sound, even the light. Everything just froze. Someone else? I repeated, my voice barely audible, as if I were testing the words, testing the reality of them. The room felt far too quiet, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum, a steady beat that felt like it was echoing through the walls. I looked at her, but there was no recognition in her eyes anymore. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who had betrayed me in the most painful way possible. She nodded slowly, the tears welling in her eyes. Yes. Someone from work. She bit her lip, struggling to find the words, but they came out in fragments. It wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't planning for this to happen. It just, everything became complicated. I felt like the ground beneath me had cracked open. How could I possibly understand what she was saying? She had been my world, the person I had trusted with everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. And now, here she was, sitting next to me, explaining her betrayal as though it was something that could be explained away with a few broken sentences. Why? I managed to ask, my voice hoarse, a lump forming in my throat. Why did you do this to us? Why didn't you tell me? Why keep it from me for so long? Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I saw the person I had loved, the person who had been with me through every hardship, every moment of joy. She wasn't just the woman who had hurt me, she was also the woman who had shared her life with me, and the realization of what she had done felt like a betrayal of not just me, but of everything we had built together. I didn't want to hurt you, she said again, her voice thick with tears. I didn't want to destroy everything we had. But it got too complicated. It got out of control, and I didn't know how to stop it. I could barely process her words. I wanted to scream, to demand more answers, but at the same time, I felt numb. How could this happen? How could I have been so blind to the signs? Was this something that had been brewing for months? Years? I leaned back, my head falling into my hands as I tried to make sense of everything. The lipstick. The late nights. The subtle distance between us that had grown over the past few months, and I had missed it. I had chosen to ignore it, to brush it off as nothing more than stress, work, or simple misunderstandings. But now, it all made sense in the worst possible way. I never meant for it to happen like this, she continued, her voice breaking as she spoke. He was just someone I talked to at work. It wasn't anything serious at first. But then, one thing led to another. We were both going through things, and it felt like it was easy to talk to him. He listened to me when you didn't. He paid attention when you didn't. I closed my eyes, the pain of her words cutting deeper than I could have imagined. She wasn't just telling me about an affair, she was telling me how long it had been going on, how she had felt lonely, neglected, even. It was as though she was offering up her justification for her actions, trying to explain why she had turned to someone else. But there was no explanation that could undo the damage. No excuse that could fix what had already been broken. I finally opened my eyes, but I couldn't look at her. I couldn't bring myself to. How could I look at the woman who had just shattered everything we had built? I stood up, pacing the room, trying to shake off the feeling of suffocation that was crawling up my throat. How long? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, the question escaping before I even realized I wanted to ask it. How long has this been going on? She hesitated, the silence stretching between us like a thick fog. And then she answered, her voice small and fragile. A few months. Since the summer. A few months. Months of deceit. Months of betrayal. I couldn't fathom how I had missed it. How could I have been so blind to everything that had been happening right under my nose? I ran a hand through my hair, trying to push away the feeling of disbelief. And what about me? I asked, my voice breaking. What about us? What about everything we had? Was that nothing to you? Her eyes filled with more tears, and she shook her head, as if trying to make sense of it all herself. You mean everything to me, she whispered, her voice trembling. I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted this. I didn't know what to say. How could I possibly respond to something like that? How could I make sense of the woman I thought I knew, of the woman who had been everything to me, being someone I couldn't recognize anymore? I turned away from her, walking toward the window, unable to face her any longer. The sky outside was dark, and I could feel the weight of the night pressing down on me. It wasn't just the end of the day, it was the end of everything. I had loved her. I had trusted her. And now, all of that felt like it had been built on lies. Do you love him? I asked, my voice quiet, but the question was as sharp as a knife. She didn't answer at first. And when she finally did, her voice barely above a whisper, it cut through the silence like a blade. I don't know. And in that moment, I realized how far we had fallen. How much had been lost. How much had been destroyed. I turned back to her, my chest tight with emotion, and whispered, I can't do this anymore. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. We both knew the truth. Our love had crumbled. And nothing, could bring it back. The days following that night felt like they were moving in slow motion. I could feel the world around me turning at its usual pace, yet I was stuck, suspended in a place where time didn't matter. It was as if I was standing in the middle of a vast, empty field, the weight of the sky pressing down on me. Every conversation with her felt distant, like we were no longer speaking the same language. The woman I had loved, the one I thought I knew inside and out, had become a stranger to me. She moved around the house like a ghost, quiet and distant. She didn't even try to pretend things were normal anymore. The tension between us had a palpable weight, and every time I looked at her, all I could think about was that damn lipstick on her dress, the lies, the betrayal. I had asked her to leave the night I found out, but she hadn't. She stayed, out of guilt, maybe. Or maybe she was hoping that time would heal the wounds she had caused, that things would magically go back to the way they were before. But there was no going back. Every time I passed her in the hallway or caught her staring out the window, I was reminded of the fragility of everything we had built. The foundation of our relationship had cracked and broken into pieces, and no matter how hard I tried to glue it back together, it was beyond repair. I could feel the emptiness settling deep into my chest. She had tried to explain herself countless times, but the more she spoke, the less I could hear her. She wanted forgiveness. She begged me to give her a chance to make it right, but how could I? How could I forgive someone who had destroyed my trust, who had destroyed us? The truth was, I wasn't angry. Not entirely, at least. Anger was easy to feel. But what consumed me wasn't anger, it was the ache in my chest, the hollow emptiness that seemed to spread through me like a poison. I was heartbroken. Completely and utterly heartbroken. Every memory we had shared, every moment of joy and laughter, felt tainted by the realization that it had all been a lie. The life I thought I was living, the life I thought we had, wasn't real. It was just a facade. And no matter how much I tried to convince myself that I could move on, the truth was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. I tried to distract myself, burying myself in work, spending time with friends, doing anything I could to avoid confronting the painful reality of our relationship. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape it. Everywhere I went, I was haunted by the thought of her with someone else. The thought that she had shared things with him that she had once shared with me, that she had touched him the way she used to touch me. I could see her face in my mind's eye, her smile, the way she would laugh when I cracked a joke. I could feel her lips on mine, and it made my stomach twist with disgust. But it wasn't just the physical act that hurt. No, it was deeper than that. It was the emotional betrayal. The fact that she had turned to someone else for the things I should have been providing. The things that I had promised to give her when we said our vows. The intimacy, the connection, the trust, it was all gone. The hardest part of it all wasn't just facing the truth, it was the overwhelming sense of failure. I had failed her. I had failed myself. We had both failed each other. And that was the part that stung the most. I had thought we were invincible, that we could weather any storm together. But the storm had come, and it had ripped us apart at the seams. There was no fixing it. No mending the rift that had torn through the fabric of our lives. One night, a few days after our conversation, she came to me. Her eyes were red from crying, and her shoulders were slumped, as if she had been carrying the weight of the world on them. She had been distant for days, but now she was standing in front of me, looking like she didn't know where to start. She didn't speak right away. She just stood there, her hands folded in front of her, waiting for me to say something. I didn't know what to say. I had no more words left. I had been asking myself if I could forgive her, if I could move past this and rebuild our life. But the answer was always the same, no. It wasn't just the affair, it was everything that came with it. The lies, the deception, the way she had completely shut me out when I needed her the most. She had broken something inside me, and I wasn't sure I could ever fix it. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet, almost pleading. I know you're angry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know you're hurt. And you have every right to be. But I need you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm so sorry for what I've done. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, just give me a chance to make things right. I shook my head, the tears that had been building up in my eyes threatening to spill over. I don't know if I can, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Her face crumpled, and she took a tentative step forward, her hand reaching out to touch my arm. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, she said, her voice trembling. I need you to know that I am truly sorry. I made a mistake, a huge mistake. And I will do anything to make it up to you. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't look at the woman who had betrayed me so completely. And yet, a part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that she could change, that we could fix this. But deep down, I knew the truth. The trust had been shattered, and no matter how much she apologized, no matter how many times she begged for forgiveness, I would never be able to forget what had happened. The image of her with him would forever be burned into my mind, and there was nothing I could do to erase it. I don't know what you want from me, I said, my voice raw. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I even want to try. She nodded, her lips trembling as though she were holding back more tears. I understand, she whispered. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am. And if there's any chance at all that we can rebuild, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I stood there, frozen in place, my heart torn in two. Part of me wanted to reach out, to take her hand, to try and make things work. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, wanted to turn away, to walk out the door and never look back. But I couldn't. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. The love I had once felt for her was still there, but it was buried under the weight of the betrayal. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find a way to move past it. So I did the only thing I could do in that moment, I walked away. The days that followed were nothing short of a blur. I couldn't seem to focus on anything. My work, my friends, even the simplest tasks seemed impossible. I would wake up each morning with the taste of betrayal still fresh in my mouth, like a foul residue I couldn't wash away. The silence that filled our home had grown deafening, the empty spaces between us stretching farther with every passing minute. Her presence in the house felt like a shadow, haunting the rooms, but she wasn't really there. Not anymore. Not in the way she used to be. The worst part was knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. I kept telling myself I should have been stronger, that I should have seen the warning signs. Maybe if I hadn't been so wrapped up in my own world, I could have caught it. But that's the thing about trust, it makes you blind to the things you don't want to see. I couldn't even bring myself to look at her anymore. Her face was the face of someone who had become a stranger, someone I couldn't recognize despite everything we had shared. She would look at me sometimes, her eyes filled with so much regret, but there was nothing she could say to make it right. Words felt useless now. They couldn't undo the damage. We hadn't spoken much after that night. The first couple of days, she tried to apologize, tried to explain how sorry she was, but the words just rolled off me, meaningless in the face of what she had done. The promises she made, the years we had spent together, they all felt like they were built on a foundation of lies, and now, with that truth exposed, everything was crumbling. One night, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the half-empty cup of coffee in front of me, the steam rising slowly and dissipating into the air. I didn't know what I was waiting for. The phone call from work? A text from a friend? Maybe even a sudden burst of energy that would force me to get out of bed and move on. But nothing came. Nothing changed. I didn't even notice when she walked in. I heard her footsteps before I saw her, slow, almost hesitant. I didn't look up, just kept staring at the coffee, the steam that no longer held any warmth for me. I could feel her eyes on me, but I didn't have the strength to meet them. Not yet. I know you don't want to talk to me, she said quietly, her voice thin with emotion. But I need you to hear me. I finally looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the woman who had once been my everything. But now, she was a shell of the person I had known, someone I didn't understand. Someone I wasn't sure I could ever forgive. I don't know if I can do this, I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I even want to. She flinched at my words, but I wasn't sorry for saying them. If anything, I needed to say them. I needed to be honest with myself, even if it was brutal. I understand, she said softly, looking down at the floor, the weight of guilt heavy in her shoulders. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. Or ever, if that's what it comes down to. But I need you to understand something. She paused, and I watched as she swallowed hard, trying to gather the strength to say what had been building up inside her. I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant for you to get hurt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her how much she had destroyed, how much she had taken from me. But I stayed silent, waiting for her to finish. It wasn't about love, she continued, her voice cracking. It was never about love. It was about loneliness. It was about feeling unseen, feeling like I didn't matter. I let myself believe that someone else's attention was enough to fill that void. I never thought it would go beyond that. I never thought I'd fall for him. But I did. And I've been so sorry for that every single day. I closed my eyes, the ache in my chest growing deeper with every word she said. The truth was cutting deeper than I thought it could. It wasn't about her love for him. It was about how much she had lost herself in the process. How much of her had gone unnoticed in our marriage, how much she had kept hidden away, and how much she had needed to feel seen, even if it meant destroying everything we had. She had never said it out loud before, the loneliness, the isolation, the feeling of being invisible in a relationship that was supposed to be a partnership, not a one-sided endeavor. And in that moment, I couldn't help but wonder, had I really been that blind? Had I truly failed her in the way she claimed? I ran a hand through my hair, trying to push away the frustration building inside me. I wasn't perfect, I said, my voice tight. But I never did anything to make you feel like you were invisible. I never gave you a reason to go looking for someone else. I know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You didn't. But sometimes, that's not enough. Sometimes, you need more than just someone who's there. You need someone who sees you. Truly sees you. I nodded slowly, though her words felt like daggers in my heart. Because what she was saying was true. We had both been guilty of neglecting each other, of letting small things slip through the cracks until they became huge, unspoken resentments. We had drifted apart, slowly, piece by piece, until we were left with nothing but empty spaces between us. And I hadn't even realized it until it was too late. I can't keep doing this, I said finally, my voice strained with the effort to control the emotions surging within me. I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not. She nodded, her eyes filled with tears. I know. And I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The room was thick with the weight of everything left unsaid, the silence a constant reminder of the fracture that now defined our relationship. We both knew what had to be done, even if neither of us was ready for it. I think we need some time apart, I said quietly, the words coming with a finality I hadn't expected to feel so soon. She nodded again, wiping away the tears that had begun to fall freely now. I think you're right. It wasn't the solution I wanted. It wasn't the way I had imagined us fixing things, but it was the only option left. We were both broken. We were both hurting. And we needed space, time, to figure out who we were, apart from one another. I'll leave, she said after a long pause. I'll pack my things. And as she turned to walk away, I couldn't bring myself to stop her. What else could I do? What else could she do? Nothing would ever fix the trust that had been shattered. Not overnight. Not in a week. Maybe not ever. As I sat back down at the kitchen table, I stared at the empty cup of coffee, the one that had been cold for hours. It was all cold now. Everything between us was cold, the warmth that had once existed between us a distant memory. And in the silence of that room, I realized the truth: some things don't get fixed. Some things, once broken, are never the same again. And maybe that was okay. The house felt different after she left. The air seemed emptier, heavier, but also somehow quieter. There was no longer the sound of footsteps in the hall, no longer the faint murmur of her voice in the next room. The silence was suffocating at first, a constant reminder of everything that had been lost, of everything that had changed. But as the days passed, the silence began to feel less like a void and more like space to breathe, to think, to heal. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to begin untangling the mess of emotions that had been left behind. But I knew I couldn't keep running from it. The pain, the anger, the betrayal, they were all a part of me now, woven into the fabric of who I was. I had to face them, to confront them head-on, if I ever hoped to move forward. For the first time in weeks, I took a long, hard look at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. The man I had been before this all started, the one who had been confident, secure, full of hope, seemed like a distant memory. The man in the mirror was someone broken, someone who had been through hell and was still trying to find his way out. I didn't like what I saw, but I knew I couldn't run from it. I had to come to terms with who I had become, even if it was just for now. I started doing things I hadn't done in a long time. I went for long walks in the park, letting the cool breeze clear my mind. I rediscovered the simple pleasure of reading books for the sake of reading, not for work or obligation. I spent more time with friends, reconnecting with people I had unintentionally pushed away in the whirlwind of our relationship. Slowly, piece by piece, I began to rebuild my life. But it wasn't easy. I still thought about her, about what we had, about what we lost. I still replayed that night in my mind, wondering if I could have done something differently, wondering if there had been some way to avoid this whole mess. But I had to remind myself that I wasn't responsible for her actions. I wasn't the one who had chosen to betray us. The truth was that no matter how much I wanted to change things, the past was unchangeable. There were nights when I would lie in bed, staring up at the ceiling, the weight of the silence pressing down on me. I would close my eyes and imagine her face, her laugh, the way she used to curl up next to me on the couch. But those memories, once comforting, had turned into daggers. Every time I thought of them, I was reminded of the lie, the deception, the affair that had shattered everything. It was during one of those nights, when I was feeling particularly lost, that I received a message from her. My heart stopped when I saw her name pop up on my phone. I hadn't heard from her since she left, and part of me didn't want to hear from her again. But another part of me, some part one couldn't quite explain, wanted to know if there was more to the story, if there was something I had missed. Maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. The message was simple: I've been thinking about you a lot. I'm sorry for everything. I know I've hurt you in ways that can never be undone. I just wanted you to know that I'm here if you ever want to talk. I miss you. I stared at the message for a long time. The words seemed so foreign now, like they belonged to a different version of our relationship, a version that had crumbled beneath the weight of betrayal. But even as I thought about all the pain she had caused, part of me still wanted to reach out. I wanted to tell her that I missed her too, that I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive her, but that I didn't know how to let go. But I didn't respond. Instead, I put the phone down, took a deep breath, and tried to remind myself that healing wasn't about rushing back into the past. It was about moving forward, even when I wasn't sure where that road would lead. The next few weeks were a blur of mixed emotions. There were moments when I felt like I was making progress, like I was finally starting to feel like myself again. I would wake up in the morning and not feel that heaviness in my chest. I would go through my day without thinking about her, without feeling the sting of betrayal. But then, out of nowhere, something would trigger the memories, an old song on the radio, a place we used to visit together, and I would be right back where I started, drowning in a sea of what ifs and might've-beens. I realized that healing wasn't linear. It wasn't a smooth, upward climb. It was messy and complicated, full of setbacks and moments of doubt. Some days, I felt like I was making progress. Other days, I felt like I was back at square one, trapped in a loop of pain and regret. It was during one of those dark days that I reached out to my therapist. I had been avoiding therapy for a while, telling myself that I didn't need it, that I could handle this on my own. But the truth was, I couldn't. I needed help. I needed someone to help me make sense of everything I was feeling, to help me process the grief and anger that had taken root in my heart. The first session was tough. I didn't want to admit how much I was struggling, how much the betrayal had cut into my sense of self-worth. But as I spoke, as I allowed myself to be vulnerable, I began to feel a shift. I realized that healing wasn't about forgetting what happened. It was about learning to live with it, to accept it as part of my story without letting it define who I was. It wasn't easy. I had moments of doubt. I had moments where I wondered if I would ever truly heal, if I would ever be able to love again without fear of being hurt. But the more I talked, the more I began to understand that healing was a choice. It was a choice to move forward, even when I didn't know where that path would lead. And little by little, the pieces began to fall into place. I started to rediscover my strength, my sense of purpose. I realized that I was more than the sum of my past mistakes, more than the pain I had experienced. I was worthy of love, and I was worthy of happiness, even if it didn't look the way I had once imagined. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever be able to fully forgive her or if I would ever be able to love again in the same way. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. And that was enough.